we wanted it to be a hip hop musical because music is a way for people to receive hard truths and, difficult stories, right? And then hip hop, not only being my passion, but hip hop is the language of the people. It's a revolutionary language. And the film is meant to have a revolutionary tone. In fact, the mission of Straight for the Hip Opera is racial reconciliation. That's the whole purpose of it.
Welcome back to the Intelligent Conversations podcast. Today, I have the honor to learn from Deborah Jane Burke. Deborah is a dynamic filmmaker, writer, hip-hop recording artist, and producer. Deborah is a graduate of Stanford University, where she penned an award-winning hip-hop musical inspired by her childhood nightmare of being trapped in slavery. This play was later developed into a short film and is now in the process of becoming a feature-length film. This conversation I had with Deborah was fascinating, to say the least. I learned a lot, and I challenge you guys that keep an open mind and learn as well. That's the point of the show. I don't want to spoil this episode, but without further ado, let's welcome Deborah Jane Burke to the show. So, tell me, how'd you get, I kind of read up a little bit on your story, but how'd you get, started into, you produce films now? Is that, am I hitting that on the head?
Yeah, so I have a production company, a media production company called House of Deborah Jane Studios. We produce film, television, music, hip hop, and we specialize in musicals. It's all about making a social and spiritual impact in the world, and that's why we produce that content, and also championing diverse voices as well as international voices. I'm actually calling you from Guyana right now, which is my family's home country.
Amazing.
And so if you really want to know where it started with my parents in Guyana, pioneering to America, immigrating there. They raised me in Orange County. It was a predominantly white world. And so I was always dealing with sort of first generation, cultural discoveries of who I am, given that I have a Caribbean background and was in this world and also trying to discover my roots, African-American culture, and all of that. So that actually is the genesis of one of our most important projects that we have, our short film, Strange Fruit, the Hip Opera.
Thank you. No, that's so cool. Tell me, this is just a weird side note. Guyana, I don't think I've ever met anyone that is from there. So
yeah.
Have you visited, you're there now.
I'm there
what are some
now.
Can you give me a few interesting things that most people don't know?
Yeah, Guyana is sultry, it's lush, it's very hot. It's like Jamaica without Bob Marley. It's very it's pretty much what it is. And great place to live. My entire family's from here. And people are very passionate and intelligent, very much so. My father is a scientist. My mother is a doctor of nursing. And does not have the luxuries that America has. But the people who immigrate here are very hardworking and just want to be the best they can be. So it's a great place.
Awesome. No, that's so cool. And then you grew up in Orange County. Yeah. And I'm sure you probably saw a lot of, like you mentioned a little bit, a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And so how do you, what makes you wake up one day and you're like, you know what? I want to start a video production company.
Right.
That just, no one just happens to wake up one day and say, that's what I need to do.
Well, that's actually a great question. Waking up is an excellent way to describe what happened with me. So in Orange County, I was always searching for my roots. So I would spend hours and hours and hours in the library reading up as much as I could on African-American culture and people. And I started reading slave narratives when I was a child at 12 years old. And I know that's very weird reading for a 12-year-old, but I was obsessed with trying to discover the history of Black people in this country because I was surrounded by no Black people at all. A very few. We were the only Black family on the block, basically. And so I just was reading and reading and reading. And what I read was both fascinating and terrifying. In fact, I couldn't believe that the things I was reading happened in this country. So that sort of set me on the path of being very historical minded. I've always been a writer since I was a child. I've been writing.
That's cool.
And since we didn't have much representation where I was, I thought if I want representation, I have to create it. And I thought that from a very young age. And so those slave narratives turned into a reoccurring nightmare. Night after night, I'd get this nightmare that I had been thrown back into the 1800s and was a slave. And
that's a nightmare for sure.
Oh, it was a nightmare. I would be like, what, how, what? And I would wake up screaming. And my mom would always come and be like, what's wrong? And I was like, I had a dream about slavery. And so my mom's like, what an interesting kid. And so, but that nightmare haunted me and followed me all the way to college. I went to Stanford University, and that's where I discovered something called hip hop theater. Hip hop theater is the mixture of revolutionary drama, storytelling, social justice, and hip hop. And it just connected with me so much. And I knew I needed to write my first hip hop musical, actually. And so I knew the story I wanted to write was the nightmare I had been having since I was a child. So I wrote that nightmare as Strange Fruit, the hip opera. And it basically follows a modern day African-American woman who's a Wall Street executive who travels back in time into slavery to rescue her ancestor from a lynching. And she does all of this to lift a ancient generational curse off her interracial marriage, off of her husband, who's white and she's black. And it's actually his ancestors that lynched her ancestors. So it's blocking the entire marriage. And so she's going back to right the wrong that was done both to her ancestor and also basically rescue her husband so that she can marry him. So it's this whole epic story that I first wrote in its first iteration at Stanford. And it actually starred back in the day a young Issa Rae. So it was a play. And that's how I began. After that, after it was successful, we raised $8,000 to put it on there. I got my first taste of being a producer, of being a writer who can put her work out. We got a standing ovation, sold out the tickets. And it was just like, I took a bow and I felt God, I'm very spiritual. I felt God whisper in my ear, this is just the beginning. And so I knew like, I got to take this on. And I knew Hollywood was next. And so after Stanford, I jumped into Hollywood, started from the bottom, scrubbing floors, PAing, whatever it took to break in, and was able to break in and focus on the writing aspect. I started to learn screenwriting. And then I went to USC Film School. I got my master's in screenwriting there. And it was after I graduated, I launched my company, House of Deborah Jane Studios. And Strange for the Hip Opera is our maiden voyage.
That's so cool. I think that's what a fascinating story. And it shows, right, that it's never you wake up like one day. It usually is years, right?
Years, yes. It's like years of
Yeah, exactly. Right. It takes time to come to what it is you want to do. So I'm curious because I did see the teaser trailer that you put out. First of all, you have a very vivid imagination. Very well done. I was like, man, like I don't think I could construct that in my mind. It's incredible.
Thank you.
But I want to ask this, and that's, are you an actor in the film as well as producing it and writing it? Are you doing all of that?
Yes, sir. I'm in it. I actually played the revengeful ghost, Inca. So nice. Yeah, I'm in there. I have a little cameo. But yeah, and what was exciting about that, you spoke about like sort of the vision of it. We wanted it to be a hip hop musical because music is a way for people to receive hard truths and, difficult stories, right? And then hip hop, not only being my passion, but hip hop is the language of the people. It's a revolutionary language. And the film is meant to have a revolutionary tone. In fact, the mission of Straight for the Hip Opera is racial reconciliation. That's the whole purpose of it. So we chose to make it a musical for those reasons. Also, I was raised on musicals. My father raised me on like every single musical. Cool. Annie, Les Miserables. Les Mis is my favorite. And I wanted Strange Fruit to be like Les Mis for people of color. So that's kind of like the vision. So that's why you see the dancing and there's hip hop sounds and all of that going on.
That's cool. It's the combination of two art forms, I would say,
Yeah.
right? Like I consider film art. Like that's just, I know some people don't, but there's like the storytelling itself, the imagination that it takes to bring a film to life. It's not easy. I'm sure you can attest to that. And
Easy is not a word I would put in that.
no, I'm sure it's not easy. But then you're also combining music, which is another art form.
Yes.
And I think that all that does is it just strengthens the message that you're trying to share with the viewers. And
I truly hope so.
And that's actually something I would say, because I would say the art I tend to gravitate towards is comedy and then film as well. So like I tend to go after movies that are funny, or even just comedians that upload their comedy specials. It's like, look, like that just to me, the combination of those two just helps you understand what the points you're trying to guess. And also it's a great way for me to laugh and also realize, hey, there's actually some messed up stuff going on.
Yeah,
And
I think levity is a very important way to also deliver a message. I always say Strange Fruit is like 12 Years a Slave meets Hamilton. We actually put some levity in it, but also remain true to the suffering that African American people went through. We don't sugarcoat anything, but we do make it palatable to where you can receive it.
that's good. I think that's the thing. That's right. The tough balance, right? You want to share a message, right? Something that inspires hope, right? Or whatever the message may be. And, but at the same time, right? If it becomes too much of the message, it's like, people, they just want to be entertained, right? It's art.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, well, I still want to get a message.
Yeah. No, we had to find a way to honor the truth and history, but also still realize this is a film, which means it is an entertaining production. So we found that balance a lot through music and dance and rap and all of that stuff as a vehicle for change, as a vehicle for racial reconciliation. Yeah.
So the music is how you would say is the best, in your case, the best way you found to essentially bring that balance.
Yeah. Ultimately, the story is a story of reconciliation, redemption, and romance. It's also a romance. It's a big, sweeping, epic story like Les Miserables. And Les Miserables, literally, the title means the miserables. I mean, it's a tough story that musical is about, but people go sing it over and over and over again because they're swept up in the music and they're swept up in the passion behind the music and the actual deep spiritual truth in the story. So we have all that woven into Strange Fruit too.
So I'm just curious then, what would you say is the spiritual truth that's coming out of your film?
In order to go forward, you must go back. It's a proverb. It's a Ghanaian proverb called Sankofa. And we see Strange Fruit the Hip Hopper as a message to America. If our country wants to progress forward in its racial relationships, it has to go back and face the strange fruits of its past, the historical truths of its past. The reason why we have difficult racial relationships today is all rooted in the construction of America, which is highly rooted in slavery. And so in order to go forward, you have to go back. And so that's what we're saying in this film. Our character literally goes back into time in order to progress forward with her marriage, in her relationship. And so Todd and Lachelle, the characters' names Lachelle and Todd, they kind of represent Black and white America coming together in a union of marriage that can only happen when the truth of our history is faced.
You can only run from the past so long, right?
You cannot run. You can run, but you can't hide. It always comes back up. You know what I mean? When we see things like George Floyd, we see things like Trayvon Martin, we see those things. I look at those and I say, this is not new. This has been done over and over and over. It's just repeating itself in today's modern age. You know, the actual spiritual and structural dynamics behind those events are woven into the fabric of America, of our society. And Martin Luther King addressed it, Malcolm X addressed it, Harriet Tubman addressed it, Frederick Douglass addressed it, Billie Holiday addressed it when she sang Strange Fruit, which literally stands for a lynched person on a tree. All these voices have been addressing the same thing. And even George Floyd, who I also consider a strange fruit, is the same thing. So the movie is simply taking what is, remixing it with music, hip hop, song, and dance, but also staying true to the message and saying this is why we are here. And if we want to progress forward, we actually have to acknowledge this. We actually have to have repentance. We actually have to have, reparations, and we actually have to have reconciliation.
I like that. Thank you for sharing that. So, I mean, this question as you were talking, that's just kind of been stirring in my mind. And that's, I guess, what does that look like implemented type of thing, your message?
Yeah.
Because I think there's that tricky balance where, right, maybe it's built in, right, to the system, but also could just be individuals, right? There's bad apples in every group of people. So I guess, what is the implementation of this truth that you're trying to spread looks like?
Yeah, so it's kind of like eating an elephant. There are many. It's a huge issue. In our country, there is systemic racism in every single pillar of the society. There's 7 pillars in society. You know, there's media, there's family, there's government, there's wealth, finance, Wall Street, you could say. There's medicine, health, and there's church and technology and things like that. All of those systems actually already have racism and colonialism and all the isms already woven into it. You know, they were built on that too in this country. So it's systemic. It's in there. And then there also are bad actors and bad apples. Nobody wants to feel like, hey, I'm a bad person. And I'm not trying to say, hey, you're a bad person, you're a bad person. What I'm trying to say is the system has been flawed from the beginning. And if you are in the system, operating in the system, then you also have been impacted and affected by that. And it might even be subconscious. And so therefore, in terms of implementation, I'm coming from media. That's my pillar. That's where I can come from. And I'm simply using a story to shine a mirror on the country. How I would love to see it implemented, what I'm saying first and foremostly, I would love this to ignite dialogue between multiracial people. It certainly did when I did the play. We had people of all races there, all different generations there, and everybody was talking. Everybody it gave people a vehicle to actually delve into the topics, the topics of our past, of slavery, of segregation, of how this place is built. It just gave people.
I bet that was fascinating.
Oh yeah, it gave people like a way in. Otherwise, like, how do you just be like, "Hey, let's talk about slavery"? Like, this is really a challenge. Like, no one's doing that over Starbucks. But let's talk about this movie, right? Let's talk about this character. What do you think about that? So I'm hoping that this will ignite the dialogue that could then be a part of implementing what is necessary, which is, like I said, it will take repentance, it will take acknowledgement, it will take restoration, it will take all this whole process of reconciliation. But I would like to be the start, the igniter.
And ignite it. That's cool, right? It does need fire doesn't start without, right, ignition, and then fire spreads, right? I mean, yes. Hate to use analogy there, but
no, that's exactly
that's how it works.
We want this movie to be a fire that spreads.
That's cool, right? And it's great, I would say, to see, I'm sure on your end as well, to see your work being appreciated by other people as well. I'm sure for you, it's like, oh, this is awesome. To see
this is a life work. This is a 20-year journey. And it's something that I put my all into it because I feel called by God to do it. This is not just some film. I have other films I have other films, I have other TV shows, I have other music, I have lots of stuff that's in development and on the slate. This one is more than a film. This is a movement and a mission that is through a movie. You know what I mean? So this is the one that I can, even how hard it gets, I cannot let it go until it's in theaters all around the world where it's supposed to be. And so speaking of challenge, just making the short film, that was tough, that movie, that short,
Interesting.
yeah, a short film, 8-minute short film, our, our 8-minute teaser, it cost $65,000 to do it. And so we had to raise the money. I was leading a team of about 60 people. It was a cross country production. We had folks from Georgia, also people from California. People were flying in. So, as producer, I'm,
The
managing
logistics of all
the
that.
logistics. I had an incredible team called the Trinity. 3 African-American women who came together and was running this entire show. And then on top of that, just filming. We filmed in an actual cotton field. So, the dancers and the choreographer, her name is Danisha, she felt like the ancestors were dancing with her. We knew that this is Georgia. This is not a Hollywood film set. So they were actually enslaved people there. There's blood in the ground. So it's very epic and very eerie and very, powerful. And, we're doing a whole shoot. We had 1 day to shoot it. And we were able to do it. Yeah, but it's really through the power of God, to be honest. It's just like walking on water to do this. When I started, I didn't have any money. So it was like raising it, getting investors, GoFundMe, all the things to put it together, and getting the buy-in from so many people. It just showed that, God was with us, and we just went out there and we did it.
That's so cool. So, I mean, this is just naturally what I want to ask, and that's, what would you say is the biggest thing you learned out of that specific part right there? Because I'm sure, like you said, raising the money to the just the logistics of getting everyone there to shooting in 1 day, like I'm sure just there was a lot of things you learned. But if there was one thing you'd like to share,
I would say there are so many lessons. The biggest one is faith. This is a singular vision, and you have to believe in something much greater than yourself to manifest it. Every single thing it took faith, whether it was bargaining and negotiating with a farmer in Georgia to get a cotton field, whether it was we had 18 interns from colleges around the country as part of my Youth in the House internship program with my company. They were working night and day on this as well to get the cotton fields and to work with all these different producers, whether it's bringing people who are from different parts of the world together to tell this story, writing the story, revising it, rewriting it a zillion times, writing the rap lyrics, writing the music, whatever it is. I have to depend on God for everything. And I have to face fear, because it's scary to do it. It's scary to even say, hey, I'm just going to do this. It's like, I'm not, I'm a human.
I will say it's easy to say that you're going to do it. It's when you actually start doing it that you're like, oh boy,
yeah,
this is way terrifying.
This is what it takes. Because I'm in California. How am I going to find a whole crew in Georgia? You know what I mean? Like that took like so much like trusting God, hearing the voice of God, and then obedience and doing what I hear God tell me to do. And so faith, we walked on water. And even before we started shooting that day, there was actually a church right by the cotton fields. We all met in this church, and we had basically like a church service, basically,
That's cool.
And I will say it was the smoothest set I have ever been on, because everybody was spiritually aligned. Everybody was honoring the vision. Whether they believed in God or not, they were like in a space of honor. And so we weren't dealing with some of the theatrics you deal with on other sets. You know what I mean? So faith, because I would say if your vision doesn't scare you a little bit, your vision's not big enough.
I like that. I'm gonna use that. Sorry if that's all right with you, but
yes, fine with me.
I mean, it should, right? Because that's when you, I guess, get kind of an indicator that, hey, you're going to grow.
Yeah.
Learn some stuff, right? That maybe you didn't know. And I like that You use the word trust, because that's something I think is honestly what I mean. This is my opinion, but I think a lot of problems boil down to that. It's just trust, and it's like you got to learn to either trust, in your case, God, or other people, or just yourself. In some cases, it's like, wait, can I actually do this?
Can I execute
and
it?
Execution, right? Ideas are plentiful. It's executing.
Well, I even had to learn about trust. That you bring up a good point. I had to learn about trust, also trusting my team. When it came to my writing, I was being very precious with it. I didn't even know I was doing this, but like, I like didn't want to let it go. And so the director one day had to confront me and be like, Deborah, do you want to direct this? Because you're doing my job. And I was like, what? so basically, I had to apologize to the director. Then I had to go pray. And God said to me, just as I'm with you, I'm with the director too. You need to let it go. And so I then hit up the director and said, listen, I'm going to baton pass this project to you. Here it is. I'm letting go. My hands are off the wheel. I'm going to trust you with my baby, which was very hard for me to do. And it was the best thing I did because he just took it and ran. And, it's because of our director. His name is Marlon, because we call him MJ. Because of him, he led, I would say, a very challenging project for any director. You know what I mean? He's out in the middle of a cotton field, like leading all these people in a whole dance, and he did it flawlessly because he was the one God had chosen to do it. But if I had not let go, I would have been trying to direct over him and would have messed up the project. So I needed to learn to trust.
I know exactly what you're saying, right? It's hard to let go of kind of that. And I mean, in your case, here, I'm going to take a few steps back. I had a guest on previously where he said, art is the expression of your humanity. And it's like, everyone wants to do that, right? And sometimes, right, in your case, where it's like, I'm going to trust someone else to deliver on this vision that I have, this idea, can be stressful, to say the least, because it's like, wait, this is like essentially my humanity. I'm putting all my passion into this project and don't screw it up type of thing. But just learning to let go is a big part. And then also allowing other people's art, their humanity, to kind of intertwine together. Just, overall, probably better. I mean, maybe you disagree, but a better version of what you even thought to begin with.
No, I agree. I agree completely. Because I came with the vision. My gift to this was vision and writing. I created the whole vision. But I needed Marlon to come in and direct everything. That's his art. That's his gift. I needed the choreographer, Dinesha Moore, to come in and create this whole phenomenal dance. That's her gift. I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to be able to direct. I needed our cameraman, Justin, who is brilliant, to come in with his visual eye and make all that. The actors were bringing their art form into it, their humanity. I mean, I had my main actress, her name is Alex. She plays the character Lachelle. She was so committed to the role that on set, she refused to be comforted in any way because she was like, I'm in slavery. I'm going to actually be there. And so she had a chain around her neck. She was wearing a barley sack. She was barefoot. She was out there in those cotton fields in those woods. She was shivering, but she wouldn't let anybody put a jacket over her or comfort her or anything. She had to stay in that character, in that horrifying place. And she just stayed there. So it was real tears. It's real. When you see her on camera, she's really emoting. She wanted to really honor her ancestors. And so that was her art form. That's something she's bringing that I'm not necessarily bringing, And then, of course, my Trinity team with their management and their producing skills and their resourcefulness, all that they were bringing to the table. I had to, if you want to be a great leader, you have to be a great servant. You're the servant of all. That's how Jesus led. Be a servant leader. And so my job as a leader is to provide the vision and then serve everybody as they come in and bring their gifts to the vision. So it's a truly collaborative production at the end.
That's cool. Thank you for sharing that. And it just, I mean, I tend to lean more towards the entrepreneur. So I'll give an example as well. And pretty much the more and more I guess engage in art, the more and more I think like And I mean, I might sound crazy, but the more and more I think guys like Steve Jobs are normal. It's like that to him, like building a tech product that was his art. It's like, I'm like, yeah, I could see why he was getting mad at people that were just kind of like, oh yeah, like just kind of being a little lazy. It's like, no, this is my art. Like put some like passion into it.
Put some respect on my name.
Exactly, right. And yeah, so that's, I mean, I've been even thinking about that. I'm like, yeah, he's seeming more and more sane. Like, I mean, yeah, he had his issues for sure, but
yeah,
I mean, everyone does.
Well, no, what I think the artist is usually consumed with their art, and they have a standard of how they want it executed. I also have a standard. So for me, I have rules on the set. You know, there's no divas allowed. Humility is a must. You know what I'm saying? We don't want attitudes and entitlement. No one has time for that. It wastes time, it wastes money. And you know, there's a certain standard. So when I interview anybody who's going to be part of my productions, I run through the standard with them before even considering hiring them. And I make sure that they are okay with everything we're saying. And I found that's very, very effective. Because once we get on set, everybody has gone through the standard. They know the gold standard. They know what they're supposed to do. They know the attitude that they have to bring. It's not just your technical skills that I want, or it's not just your artistic skills. I want you to have character so that when you're on the set, you're operating from a certain spirit or character space that's in alignment with success. You know, and so I understand why Steve Jobs would be like, what are you doing? You know, because he has a certain standard. And if you're not reaching that standard, he doesn't want you on the ship. And I feel the same way.
Exactly. No, it's, it makes sense. Right. And I'm of the philosophy. It's like, look, you're just not the right fit. Like, and also I would say it's important to clearly communicate that vision as well, which I mean, you have done as well. So, I mean, that makes it also easier because people are sitting in for an interview and they're like, I don't really want to get behind that vision. That's okay, right? They go somewhere else.
There are other ships.
Exactly, right?
Right.
and you wouldn't even want them, right, to begin with, because that just, right, it would just butt heads and it wouldn't work.
Yeah, if we're talking about bad apples, that's a bad apple. That's going to affect the rest of the team. And I, you know, you have to be really, I've learned with the interview, you have to be really discerning. You know, so I'll interview people, and then, you know, I don't do it alone. I do it with my producers and my people I trust who can discern the character. Because anybody can say, well, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. That's great, but it's also, how do you do it? You know what I mean? Like, how are you operating? You know, skill set is not enough. You need humility and skill set and hard work and passion and all these things to come into this particular ship. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
If you want to join this ship, this is the requirements.
This
right?
is what it is. And that's how we are able to operate at what I hope and believe is a high level. You know, whether it's a small short film or it's a 20, 30, $40 million feature film, the standard will be the same. You know, and that way we will attract the type of people who are really ready for where we're trying to go and operate at the level that we want to operate at.
Awesome. And that, I mean, everyone wants to do great work, right? To quote.
Yes, that's the cool thing. People actually want to be great, but they just need parameters in which to be great. You know, so if you set it up like, this is great and this is not great, now people know, okay, let me shoot for the stars over here. You know what I mean? And so that's why I try to be very structured and organized and even approaching people with an opportunity.
So this is last question before we wrap up. I hate to wrap this up, but that's on that note, as I would consider you to be a pretty creative person, right? Come up with that vision, all that. How do you, I guess, also develop those structure skills? Because I would guess it's quite difficult to, I guess, put parameters on that vision, because vision kind of is all over the place when you're very creative, I would say.
Yeah. I would say foundationally, I learned discipline and structure and organization from my parents. My parents were we grew up in a strict home. So I learned that if I want a vision or if I want to produce a vision, first, of course, I have to create it, but then to manifest it, that's where you got to roll up your sleeves and do the unglamorous work, right? The visioning and the ideas and the creative, that's super fun and that's very glamorous. But when it comes to execution, it's like late night staying up. It's rewriting and revising. It's the sweat equity. And that's the other part. The Bible says work without faith, the faith without works is dead. So faith works together. It's how you manifest vision. So I learned hard work as a child. I manifested it through academia. I was very scholastic through Stanford, through USC. The rigor and the intensity and the expectation that was required. I was able to manifest in those ways. So I learned discipline. I still have a lot to grow in discipline, mind you, but there is a foundation there already. And I know that that is critical to manifesting any type of vision. So that's how I'm able to also structure it, And then I also lean on the expertise of other people who are better than me to come in and help structure and organize things. But internally, I do have that mechanism.
That's cool. And I like how you mentioned there at the end that you have much more to learn because that's inevitable.
Absolutely. I'm learning. Being in Guyana, where you have no conveniences, by the way, very few conveniences that you have in America, this is teaching me a whole other level of discipline. Right? You got to get stuff done while the daylight is shining because there might be a blackout and then you have no lights. You might not have any water. You might not have this or that. And so if you haven't gotten what you needed done during the time you were supposed to get it done, well, tough luck, right?
That's it.
So it's like, I'm living very nicely out here, but still the when you see people from other cultures where my parents came who have to have a certain level of discipline and rigor to survive, because they just don't have the microwave conveniences that we have in the States. You learn there's a whole other level to this too. And so I'm still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still striving to be more and more like my parents and more like people I admire and respect so that I can be the best person and visionary I can be.
Awesome. And that's what we all want to do. So thank you, Deborah, for coming on and sharing the knowledge and wisdom that you have. So if people want to see this film, reach out to you, all that fun stuff, what's the best way they can find you? All that?
Yes, two of the best ways. One, go to our website, www.strangefruithiphopera.com. Go visit us, our website, to see how you can support and see how you can be a part of our movement, of our movie. Also, I encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram. We are at strangefruit_hiphopera. Follow us. We are always putting up information, announcements, what's going on, videos, behind the scenes, music. We really want people to engage in this movie, engage in this movement, and be a part of helping us get it made into a feature film, because that's the whole point right now. We want to get it made into a feature film. We want to get it into the hands of Disney or whatever studio we want to work with that can bring it to the next level. And we want it to be something that our listeners are involved in actually being a part of getting it made. So all that activity is on Instagram. Go to our Instagram, follow us, stay tuned, be a part of the discourse about racial reconciliation, and be a part of something magical.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on today and sharing the knowledge and wisdom that you have.
Thank you. I really appreciate this interview. You were great. This is amazing. I feel very honored to be a part of Intelligent Conversations, and I hope I was intelligent enough. I'm just kidding, but
no, everyone is. Everyone, trust me. You learn. Everyone has something intelligent to share. It's just where they spend that time that matters.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone. As you can tell, that is Deborah Jane Burke. She's a very intelligent person, has great things to share. I challenge you guys, if anything spoke to you, or if you're interested in watching her film, to reach out to her and to go to the website that she gave you there. Stay tuned till next week. We have a great guest lined up for you guys. See you guys next week, and let's get after it.
Hey everyone, if you liked this episode and would like to hear more, be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button. We release a new episode every Wednesday for you guys to listen to. Thank you guys so much for the support that you give. We could not have done this without you guys. If you would like to be a potential guest on the show, check out intelligentconvos.com and fill out the form there. Thank you guys again, and let's get after it.